Namaskar. Here is one hangout that's going to go into the insides of energy, be it petroleum, be it fossil fuel, be it nuclear, be it solar, and any other kind of geothermal, any energy possible. How much energy is there in the world, and what about Bharat? And what are its resources and challenges? All this and more with my good friend Mohan Krishna Sonti. Mohan Garu, namaskar and welcome to P Guru's channel. How are you?
Namaskaram, Andy. So, Shubh Dashara to everyone. So, the objective of this presentation today is going to be about giving a full exact information on what resources we have, what is our energy consumption, and so we know the exact numbers and the data and facts. So, none of the abstract things like we have large quantity or small quantity, it gives you the exact numbers and what are the challenges and all the details.
So we're going to jump right into a PowerPoint presentation because it's full of data and numbers for you to absorb. So I'm going to put the presentation up and over to you, Mohan Garu.
All right. So namaste, everyone. So the first page, as usual, I have all the sources that I've listed over here. So you can see that the ones in maroon are the ones in the blue, all of them are the government sources. So which are all very authentic, and I got all the data from the government sources. It's as authentic as it can get. The one in the orange are also primary sources. Basically, these are the world associations and the international organizations and big groups that actually have the right kind of a data, a lot of which is also extracted from the government sites. I think I just mentioned one newspaper, but I did verify with many other sources to make sure this data is very authentic and accurate. All right, so we'll jump right in. So this is about the energy sources and challenges. Some of the quintessential and the primary source of any energy is electricity today. I mean, that is how most nations and the people consume energy. So, but this electricity is not direct, it's indirect, because in a sense, we use other resources to produce electricity. So we are going to go over all the resources like the coal, oil, gas, solar, wind, hydro, biofuel, and nuclear. So these 8 put together, they account for almost 99% or more than 99% of the entire electricity production and most of the energy that a country consumes. So this is going to be mostly focused on Bharat, right? And then we are going to talk a little bit about the challenges as well. One of the challenges is natural resources, because many of them do consume the natural resources. So which means whatever Bharat has is all that it has, and we'll know the exact number, and so how long it's going to last and how difficult it is to extract them. And other cases, we are going to be dependent on other countries to get those natural resources. Then there is an element of the challenge is the efficiency. Efficiency is many of these different types of energy sources. Converting them to electricity is not going to be that easy. There are a lot of limitations to it, and we're going to see in each case what the limitations are and why it is not as efficient as we imagine it to be. Then there's going to be losses. For example, electricity, the distribution to transmission, all of them is going to have losses. And there is a storage too, and storage also has certain losses. So the numbers that we see is what is generated, and once it reaches the actual consumer, there are going to be many other losses along the way. So these are some of the challenges. And then the storage. And storage is not an easy factor. Besides the losses, the storage itself requires like batteries and many other things, which require a certain different type of natural resources. So that is another challenge we have. Another one is technology. Some of the technologies are yet to be developed fully. I mean, it needs to be realized completely. But over the last century, I think a lot of progress has been made, particularly in the last few decades. And as technology improves, many of them become a lot more viable. Like some of these methods which were not viable, say about 30, 40 years ago, today are more viable because of improvement in technology. Then there is political challenges as well. Like, for example, China is an authoritarian system. So in Bharat, for example, we have a democracy. So let's say we want to vacate some village for establishing some of these resources, to get the resources like mining, or even have some wind farms and things like that. It's not going to be that easy, because we have a lot of organizations and NGOs are going to protest, and then there is opposition parties who can actually take advantage, and there's so many other complexities to it in a democratic system. So some politics does play into the role in using these. And the last challenge is the economy. The economics of, for example, the mining itself, even though it just sounds like mining, for example, copper mining, not all the copper ores are the same. So for certain ores, it might be a lot more economical to actually extract the copper, but for certain ores, it may not be. Like that is the case in Bharat. The ore that we have is of a different kind, and it takes a little more energy to actually extract the copper. So it may not be as much viable. So these are some challenges. We're going to go over all the details and these 8 different categories on how we consume the energy and how we generate and what are our limitations and challenges. All right. Okay, first a very quick overview on the color coding that I have used. The red ones are important ones. Just keep an eye on those. So those are the numbers that I want you to take a note of. And I used orange in case of Bharat. And then the blue is basically, mostly I used it for countries or as to highlight certain topics. And the green is like, mostly just highlighting a minor highlight, something that you might just want to take note of. All right, so keeping that in mind, the electricity consumption, China consumes about 10,000 terawatt hours per year. USA consumes about 4,400 terawatt hours, and Bharat consumes 2,000 terawatt hours. So that should give you an idea on how the consumption of electricity is. What is a terawatt hour? A watt, let's say you have a 100-watt bulb and that you run it for 10 hours, then that is 1,000 watt hours or 1 kilowatt hour. So overall in the country, we consume about 2,000 terawatt hours. So per capita, before we go to per capita, where do we generate the electricity from? In Bharat, for the 2,000 terawatt hours, 1,500, that is 75% of it, comes from coal. So coal is actually that important. Even though people talk about solar and hydro and all of those things, they all contribute anywhere between 3 to 4% to about 7 to 8% of the energy, the electricity generation in Bharat. 75% comes from coal. China isn't that far behind. 60% of Chinese electricity also comes from coal, but they do make substantial progress in hydro, wind, gas, and solar, and all of them. Gas is not so much because we don't have gas in abundance, neither does China has it, relatively speaking. USA, if you look at it, it uses gas as a primary source of generating electricity. It's almost close to 40-45% of it is that. They also do use coal, but majority of it comes from gas. So this is how these countries are set up. Now, if you look at the consumption per capita data, that is per person per year, USA consumes about 12.5 megawatt hours per person per year. China consumes about 6.5 megawatt hours per person, and in Bharat it is 1.4 megawatt hours. And for UK, I just took a reference as the UK because I looked at what we need to be a developed country, and among the developed nations, UK is somewhere in the lower end of consumption of energy, and that stands at 4.5. Now, we see from here that the per capita does not necessarily indicate a developed country or a developing country. Like, for example, China is considered a developing country, but it consumes 6.5 megawatt hours. That's because they have a lot of manufacturing industries and so many other things that consume a lot of energy, right? So that's why the number is very high. But we can clearly say that in Bharat, we do 1.4 megawatt hours. We have to increase our consumption to at least something like UK, 4.5 or 5 megawatt hours to be reasonably developed, which means the 2,000 terawatt hours will eventually have to go to about 6,000 terawatt hours or more for the kind of population that we have, right? So we have to keep those numbers in mind because they'll be useful later. I'm going to do all the math with 2,000 terawatt hours, but we're not going to be stalling there. In the next coming decades, our energy consumption is going to go really high. It has to go somewhere near 6,000 terawatt hours. All right. Now, the last point here is about 365 days, 24 hours is 8,760 hours per year. Keep that number in mind because that is how we calculate the terawatt hours. converting the watts is how the power generation, and then the energy generation is how long, how many hours does it run in a year, is how we calculate the energy generation. All right. Okay. So now let's go with the coal part of it. So USA has about 275 billion tons of coal. It has the largest reserve. The world has 1,300 billion tons. USA has the largest of 275. China, Russia, they all have about 175, 180 billion tons, and Australia too. Bharat has 140 billion tons of coal reserves. All right. We have seen that 75% of our energy, electricity, comes from coal. So coal is very important to us. Now, how much do we consume per year? China consumes about 5 billion tons per year. All right. Bharat consumes about 1.3 billion tons per year. USA is 0.4. It doesn't rely so much on coal, even though it has large coal reserves. And in the world consumes about 9 billion tons per year. Now, what does this mean? So if we consume 1.3 billion tons per year and we have about 250 coal plants, China has 1,500 or more. The world has 14,000, right? So just having a coal plant, each plant can have different capacity. But overall, our 250 coal plants have the capacity of about 250 gigawatts. And 1,500 of China has 1,200. Now this 250 gigawatts, if you look at, remember the 8760 number, right? So you multiply out of that many hours, the efficiency, the duration it runs is only 70%. It can go down for many reasons. For example, for maintenance, or the consumption during daytime is very high, at nighttime is very low, so it actually doesn't function its full capacity and things like that. For putting all those factors in, the total efficiency of each of the plants on an average is 70%. Now with these numbers, you see that 1.3 billion tons per year, and our total reserves is 140 billion tons, which means if we use it at this rate, the coal will last for 100 years. But you remember I said 2,000 terawatt hours is the baseline today. We need to improve that to maybe 6,000 terawatt hours, right? If we go to 6,000 terawatt hours,
that. Yeah, triple that. Yeah.
Which means the coal is not, if we go proportionately, the coal will not last for more than 30 years. But at the current rate, the way we have it today with the 250 plants, coal will only last for 100 years. So this is not our solution for now because we don't have that many reserves, right? And we cannot keep using coal for the electricity all along as we develop in the future, in the coming decades. Now we'll go with hydro. So does hydro have a potential? Now you see that China has a large capacity. It has 400 gigawatts. And the generation of electricity is 1,300 terawatt hours, and it runs at 40% efficiency. USA also has about 100 gigawatts at 30% efficiency. Bharat has only 50 gigawatts that it has installed so far, which generates 150 terawatt hours, which runs at 35% efficiency. Why is it that way? It's because the rivers that we have and the flow, the rate at which they flow, and there's so many other factors that come into being. If you add up all of that, and you remember 8,760 number, the gigawatts is 50. When you do the multiplication, it does not run every hour at 50 gigawatts, right? There are times when there are lean times, and many of our rivers where we build the dam is also dependent on monsoons and many other things. But China does have a very high potential. One of the largest dams in the world are built in China because they do have these riverways in which they can build the dams and they can extract a lot of energy.
You talk about three gorges?
Yes, all of them. Yes. And they have few other dams too that they built, and there are few more in pipeline because they do have rivers that can actually generate that. We do not have that kind of riverways which can generate that much energy. So our government, this is again in the government website, I've given the list and the sources in the beginning. They did a thorough examination of the whole country and they surveyed it, and they said the theoretical max capacity for Bharat is about 135 gigawatts of hydroelectricity is what we can produce today, having the right kind of dams over all the rivers that actually can produce electricity, 135 gigawatts. Now, they do mention a number called pump storage capacity of 175 gigawatts. Now I'll explain what is the difference. So because the electricity consumption, like I said earlier, the daytime is very high, nighttime is very low. So somehow we cannot just keep generating at, like in this case, 50 gigawatts capacity all along, right? Sometimes there's going to be lean times. So what is a pump storage? That number seems high, but it is little misleading. There's a reason why I put the max hydro capacity at 100 gigawatts. Think of it this way. Let us say we produce 100 watts of 100, we have 100 watt hours of energy, right? Of which only 50 is consumed. So what do we do with the remaining 50? Often it just goes waste. That is in the conventional capacity, right? But what we do is we use this 50 to pump the water back to the higher ground. And that has about 80% efficiency, which means up to 40 watt hours worth, we can pump it back. And then the next
So what
day,
you're saying is, if I understand you correctly, Mohan Garu, see, normally the hydroelectric generation is there's a dam. Follow my hand, viewers. Water is stored to the left of my hand. This is where the water is stored. This is a dam. Then the water goes from this to the lower level, and that incline is where the hydroelectric generation happens. And they have a way to find out that there is not for total usage of the electricity being generated here. So the same power is used to put the water back on the other side of the dam. Is it correct?
exactly. So that is called the pump storage, because if it is not fully utilized, we use the same energy to pump it up. So now with this 100 watts, that 100 watt hours we generated, let us say 50 is consumed, the remaining 50 is used to pump the water back. That has 80% efficiency. So the next day we generate 40 more. So in theory, we generated 140 watt hours. It looks like 140, but really our utilization was 90 watt hours. So it used to be 50, but with the pump storage, we can increase that to say 90, something like that, right? So that number is a little misleading. So max hydro capacity, I put it at 100 gigawatts. It can probably go to like maybe 120, but that's about the theoretical max as of today. So our max is about 300 terawatt hours is what we can generate in the hydroelectricity. So that's a theoretical max. We cannot do anything more than that because that's all the rivers that we have. Yes.
So, Mohan Garu, 100 gigawatts is equal to 300 terawatt hours, because the other one is little different. Is that correct?
Yes,
What
that's
is the number?
because we multiply with the efficiency, right? It has an innate
Hmm.
efficiency. The water is only so much efficient. Basically, we cannot keep running this throughout the year because this is
Right.
an average over all the rivers, and certain rivers don't run at the same speed, at the same volume all the time. So
Yes.
even though the generators have a capacity of 100 gigawatts, there are times when we shut down the dam, then we open it, and there's so many other reasons. Then we have, in some cases, it depends on monsoon, which means it really doesn't run for most of the time. So things like that. So all these are factored in, and the net efficiency is about 35%. Also, remember that this is the efficiency at the source. We talked about the losses, if you remember, the distribution and transmission, and so many other losses exist before it actually gets to the consumer. But we'll go with the numbers that we have right now. This is our capacity is actually 50 is what we installed. We can install up to 135, and with the pump storage, we can probably pull in about 300 terawatt hours is the max. After that, so can we have, this is a theoretical maximum limit of hydroelectricity that we can ever produce in Bharat. So that's about it. So this cannot be a complete solution for us. Yeah.
One question, because I want to draw some parallels here. My recollection is inside the United States, because I studied some courses when I was a student, that let's say there is a hydroelectric generator, and from there it goes to the closest substation from where it gets distributed. That is called high tension wires, and that is usually at that 440 volts. And how is it in India?
So basically, there are ups and downs for that. Basically, we do a step up. We have the transform. That's also part of the infrastructure, right? For
Yes.
long distances, we have to step up the transformers and step up transformers, which increase the voltage, so it can travel farther with less losses, and then we step down. So there are different ways of doing it. In Bharat too, usually the long cables that go from across the states tend to be of a higher voltage, and it's often more than the 400 volts. It's much higher than that. But local ones are not, and also the quality of the wire that we use, and so many other factors come into picture, right? So that's where we see a lot of losses. So again, the 100 gigawatts, the 8,760 hours if it had run for all the time, all the 365 days, 24 hours, and then it runs at 35% efficiency, you get the 300 terawatt hours. That's how I got that number. All right.
Okay.
For
Next
all
one.
the other ones too, we multiply with the efficiency because that's as much as it runs. So even though it's
Right.
8,760 hours, but it's only at 35% the capacity, right?
Right.
All right. So that was not a solution. Now we go with the wind electricity. Again, there are theoretical. There's National Wind and Energy Department in Bharat. That's reference is also given in the first page. Now for the wind electricity, we see that China has already installed a 520 gigawatt capacity, which generates 1000 terawatt hours, which is running at 22% efficiency. US also has about 150 gigawatts. Bharat has installed about 50 gigawatts, which generates only 80 terawatt hours, right? Unlike the hydro, we are seeing 50 to 150, because this has only 19% efficiency. Why is it so? It's because wind electricity is extremely uncertain. It depends on the wind, and there's so many other factors that come into play. So the 50 gigawatt capacity does not generate 50 gigawatts every hour. Only 20% of the time, if you look at it, that comes out to be about 20% efficient. So it's 50 times 8,760, and the net energy that's generated, sometimes it only generates 50 gigawatts, sometimes 5, and so on with the max of 50. So you see that it's only 20% efficient. Now, our studies show that, and these are in our Bharatiya website, government website, the theoretical max capacity, they just looked through the whole country and they said at 120 meters height, we can generate up to 700 gigawatts. At 150 meter height, it will be 1,160 gigawatts. So at some total of 1860 gigawatts, and I assume the efficiency is still 19%. It could be much lower because we're going to capture the more efficient places first. And the chances are that the rest of them are probably lesser efficient. But the assumption that it's going to be the same level, the theoretical max is 3,250 terawatt hours is what we can generate. All right. Which seems to be like sufficient for our needs for now. But here's the issue. These are viable mostly in about 8 states only, which is still okay, which means those states can be self-sufficient, and the distribution and all of that, the transmission, maybe the lines, they are self-sufficient for those states, but other states need different solutions. Then the total break-even point for wind energy is about 8 to 10 years. And this is extremely variable because you have to remember, for the wind energy, there are moving parts. When there are moving parts, it has a very high maintenance. A lot of things do break. The life of the system is about 20 to 30 years. In about 8 to 10 years is when we actually break even. You will see some numbers where some people will say it'll break even at, say, 5 years or 7 years and things like that. That is not necessarily true because many of them are the private players, and they calculate many other factors such as the government incentives and things like that. But we are talking about how the country is generating this energy, which means government doesn't give an incentive to itself. It is paying the full price, right? Then one more issue with this is there's a dependency on the rare earth rare earth minerals, because we need high efficient magnets. Like anything else, in this case, the high maintenance, because there are a lot of moving parts, there are generators and there are turbines and many other things, and they often do fail. So this is actually quite intensive for maintaining. Also, it is not viable across the country. It's only viable in 8 states, right? And its efficiency, that 19%, also depends on the type of magnets we use, the kind of material we use, and how we generate the electricity. If we use a lower grade, this efficiency drops quite dramatically. So here we have a dependency on rare earth minerals, such as neodymium and many other magnetic the minerals. We'll go over that later on where we find those rare earth. So wind is kind of a good solution, but it has its own serious drawbacks. So it is not entirely sustainable. Every 20, 30 years, we have to generate and make all of them again. Then we go with the solar electricity. I know it is today people talk about solar being a great solution, but here are a few issues with it, right? So China has about installed 900 gigawatts, but it only generates 835 terawatt hours, which means it is actually running at 11% efficiency. Now, USA is the only one that's doing little better with 180 gigawatts installed. It generates 300 terawatt hours. That's 20%. In Bharat, we have already installed 100 gigawatts. Most of these numbers have taken from 2024 or 23 or 22 in the last 2 or 3 years. So they can vary a little bit. Maybe some numbers show 120 gigawatts, but let's say about 100 gigawatts is installed, which generates about 135 terawatt hours, which is running at 16%. Now, why is that? It's because the solar energy, it's basically, even though it can generate 100 gigawatts, we can conveniently take away 12 hours out, right? At nighttime, it cannot generate anything. In fact, the peak daylight is when it can actually reach its full potential. So solar energy is inherently is going to work only at a certain duration. Other duration, it actually produces nothing. And the peak of it is at 100 gigawatts. So if you draw the curve, the efficiency is going to be pretty low. And you'll see that across board. That's why it's at 16%. Now, even this has a total cost break-even point of about 8 to 10 years, which is a little bit variable depending on how this works. But there are no moving parts. That's a good news. The life of the system is about 25 to 30 years. And the solar energy, the panel itself, it degrades to about 85%. It has a degradation of 15% over its life. Now, because it generates only at a certain part of the day, it's pretty imperative that in many cases, we have to store this for usage later. We cannot generate this at night. So if we need solar as a solution, then essentially we have to store this. That requires the batteries, which means we are dependent on lithium, cobalt, nickel. And of course, copper is one of the dependency for many of the wiring and all of that. Now, our theoretical max capacity, again, our Indian government has actually done a thorough research on this, and they came up with these numbers. They said we can have solar farms and generate a theoretical max of 750 gigawatts. And the rooftops can theoretically generate 650 gigawatts. But there are several studies that show that the rooftops has a very limited adaptability. People don't necessarily put it. I know there are people who think, I have seen solar panels on several roofs and it's very common in Bharat. Not really so. It is similar to, for example, I've seen people say the cars are extremely common in Bharat, right? The adaptability is actually very low. The total number of cars that we have is about 50 million for a 1.5 billion population. And with the two-wheelers, we have about 260 million or so. So together, the vehicles are about 300 million is all that we have, or 320 million for a 1.5 billion population. But it looks like everybody has a car. Now compare that with, say, America, right? America has about roughly 300 million population and there are 300 million vehicles. All right. So that is a complete adaptability. In Bharat, I mean, we are too far away from it. We don't have 1.5 billion cars. We have about 50 million. So likewise, the 650 gigawatt, all the rooftop solars that you see, the summation of that is actually a very teeny amount of electricity that we actually generate from the rooftops. That's a very small fraction. This 650 gigawatts is the overall theoretical max capacity, looking at all the cities and all the buildings and everything like that. So I go with the 750 gigawatts as a farm. Let's say we hit the max. That will be 1,000 terawatt hours. Is 16% efficiency is what we can produce. So solar can only go so far. That's about it. And remember that we have a heavy dependency on lithium, cobalt, nickel, right? And for the wind, we have a dependency on the magnetic, the rare earth minerals. So we'll go with the next slide on the energy resources, right? And the reserves
Can you go back? I have one question,
Yeah.
Mohan Garu. So see here, you said the efficiency is 16%, right? I have done some research on this. What I found out was if you use solar panel, right, about 27% of the light reflected on the solar panel gets reflected back. In other words, it's going waste.
Correct.
What can be done is, if you think about this is the solar panel, it's usually at an angle so that it can catch the sunrise to the maximum. So if you can use a polarized lens, then what happens is you have to use two mirrors and then or two receivers, and then one will have one set of cells, which will take that, and the other one will have the other set of cells. So from, say, today, the efficiency per energy per solar cell is about 14 to 15%. With
Yes.
this done efficiently, with, you need to do more micro inverters also, which India tries to avoid. Also, India needs to have infrared coating, not ultraviolet, because US uses ultraviolet. So if for example China dumps some solar cells because they've overproduced them, you need to check and make sure it's infrared coated, not ultraviolet coated. In other words, excess capacity that was not sold in US and Europe should not be dumped in India. That again lowers the efficiency rate. So
Yes.
तोल मोल के हिसाब से
So,
India can have a clear policy that we are going to make sure that we can get the maximum out of our solar energy. This thing will give you 23 to 24% done very well. That is to
yes.
polarized and two screens, and
USA
capturing
has that,
as
right?
much sunlight as possible. So
Correct.
that's something that India should really look at. Over to you, sir. You wanted to say something?
So, in fact, in USA, the efficiency is about 20%. Also, remember that this efficiency, like we're talking about the technology challenges, right? This has improved over the decades, and that's where we stand today. It can go further, maybe in the later coming decades, but there's limit to how far it will go because half the day we don't have sun, and then these solar panels, they have to be at a certain angle. The sun moves from one to the other side, and it only captures so much. So it can never be at a full. The potential is going to be very, very low, no matter what we do, right?
Like,
All right. So
yeah.
next we go with the actual resources, the lithium, cobalt, nickel, rare earth. We need all of that. So we have a dependency if you want to go in the path of solar or wind energy. And solar, actually, we built solar panels. I think we have already hit a capacity of about 25 to 50 gigawatts worth of solar panels we produce in Bharat today. But like I said, there is a limit to how far we can go. That is a theoretical max. Now, what do we depend on? The rare earth for the wind, for the magnets and all of that, we do depend on rare earth. We see that China has about 44 megatons of rare earths, of which the production is 270 kilotons per year. Brazil has the second highest of 21 megatons and it doesn't produce anything. Bharat actually has 7 megatons of rare earth and we produce very little. See, this is where the technology as well as the economics come into play, where somebody has to invest and then figure out a way of extracting these rare earths. So like we see in Brazil, they actually don't produce much. But in USA, it has only 1.9 megatons, but it produces 45. It produces the second highest because they also consume it, right? So you see that technically for rare earths, Bharat is self-sufficient in some sense because we definitely have the third largest resources. But we don't extract them that well yet because that is energy intensive and it is also technology intensive and people need to find and invest in it and do the right way of getting the rare earths. So we haven't done that kind of an exploration yet. All right, so we produce very little. Now, Burma, Nigeria, Greenland also has a lot of rare earth, and that probably you can understand why America is so much interested in Greenland because that has a similar amount of rare earths, similar to USA. Now,
Mohan
look
Krishna
at,
Garu,
yeah,
have you factored in some of the Burma extraction that China does illegally into the China numbers?
no, it doesn't. So they actually give it as a different number. So we haven't accounted into the political aspect on how they steal from one place and take it to the other. These are official
So
government numbers.
it's all in Hawaii.
Right. So these are all from the government website. So you take this as what the government claims. So these are the legal numbers taken from the government websites. Now look at the lithium. Remember the lithium batteries, and we need that for if we want to go from the cars, we want to make them electric vehicles. We need the lithium batteries, we need lithium, cobalt, and all of those, right? So we see rare earth, we have seen this. Lithium, 9.3 megatons is what Chile has, and then Australia, then Argentina, and then China. USA has very little, it has 1.1 megatons. In Bharat, it doesn't even figure out. I know we did find certain people have read in the news that we found some lithium reserves, but those are very, very small. They don't really account for anything. Now we look at the cobalt. Cobalt is Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo has about 6 million tons. And Australia has 1.7. Nickel, same numbers like Indonesia has 55, Australia 24, and then it comes down. Basically, Bharat does not have any of these. We don't have lithium, we don't have cobalt, we don't have nickel. All of them are in very small quantities. Now I have the world numbers. Look at this. 90 million tons of rare earths is what the world has, of which 44 is in China. It has 50% of it. But rare earth, we can still live with it. We still have 7 million tons. Lithium, there are 28 million tons, is a limit. That's as much as the reserves that we know of in the world. And of the 28, Chile has about 9.3 and Australia has 6.2. Together, they account for 50% of it. Cobalt, there are only 11 million tons, of which Congo has 6. More than 50% of it is just in one country. Nickel, again, 130. Indonesia has 55, Australia 24. So essentially, if we want to go this route, whether it is wind energy is probably, if we extract the rare earths, we might be in a better shape. For solar, we will be dependent on all of these. Also, remember, same for the wind energy, also requires certain storage, right? But solar, we definitely need the storage. If we go this route, we will be dependent on either Indonesia or Africa or South America or some other countries, Australia and many other countries, Brazil and so on, right? So, like oil, this is not a completely energy independent. It's basically dependent on other countries, all right? So we have to go with other solutions. Looks like all of them have some issues. Let's look at the gas consumption, right? Now, this I got it from the US Energy Information Administration. This graph, they give the whole projection. I'm more interested in just the 20.
I'm going to go full graphic mode. Everybody can listen to you, but this, because it's got a lot of numbers and it's very tight. Here we go. Over to you, sir. Please continue.
So this graph you can see from 2022 and 25. I mean, they're given a projection. This is US Energy Information Administration, the data source, and you can see the whole graph, but we are interested in 2022 and 25. Just looking at that portion, you will see that it gives the industrial use, the transportation, electric power generation, and all of that. That is the graph it shows. We can see that the industrial use is about 75%. The gas that we actually import, we use 75% of all the gas for industrial use. Now, we have to note that our production is about 50% and we import 50% of it. So we do produce, we have some gas in Bharat and we do produce it. 50% of it is local and 50% we import it from other countries, right? We use only 3% of that for electricity generation, which we have seen the number earlier is 60 terawatt hours. But that is for industrial. There are many other uses for that and how that is generated. Now, for industrial, we use 75% of the gas that we use in Bharat is used for industrial purposes, and majority of that goes for making fertilizers, the plastics, and the synthetic fibers and fabrics and things like that. About 15% we use it for transportation, and the non-energy is about 50%. Out of that industrial 75, the non-energy is considered 50%, which is mostly the fertilizers, synthetic fabrics, and all of that, the plastics and all of that. That's where we use the gas for. Now, our consumption.
So when you say transport, one second. No? When you say transport, these are these buses that say CNG, right? Compressed natural gas.
Definitely,
buses.
that is
and
one
also,
of
and
yes.
Cabs also now. Many cabs have CNG. Go ahead.
So many of these transport, all of these things can eventually be converted to electricity at some point in the future. But that's where the consumption is today. And in the 75%, you have seen 50% is fertilizers, plastics, synthetic, the fabric and things like that. Another 25% is used by steel industry and many other industries. They also use gas. Our daily consumption of gas is about 7 billion cubic feet per day. And also gas, we have to remember we have the natural gas and many other places, other utilities too, besides the vehicles. That is transport, and we have other places that we use for residential. There's a small fraction for residential, as we see in the graph. So our consumption is about 7 billion cubic feet per day. Put it into perspective, USA has 90 billion cubic feet per day. And remember, USA has almost 40% of electricity is generated using gas, and they have plenty of that. So they use that. Now, what are the reserves that we have? The total gas reserves that we have from our Indian government exploration, we have about 1,400 cubic kilometers. That's how much gas we have. That the exploration, that's the theoretical max. That's as much as we have. The world has 200,000 cubic kilometers. That is the total amount in the world, of which Bharat has only 1,400 cubic kilometers. So we really don't have this as much in resource. I did some math here. For 1 cubic kilometer is 35 billion cubic feet. Our consumption is 7 billion cubic feet per day. So for 365 days, and if I divide by 35 billion cubic feet, I get 73 cubic kilometers per year is what we consume. And our total reserves are 1,400. Our current production is only 50%, and 50% we kind of import. So if we don't import at all and use, from our own resources with full production, the total reserves that we have will last only for 20 years, and then we are done with it. All right. So this cannot be a solution, because we are actually, after 20 years, we're pretty much done. Today, it lasts 40 years because 50% we import from outside. Otherwise, we don't have that much resources. Then we go with oil. Oil consumption for USA, it is 21 million barrels per day. And China consumes 16. For Bharat, we consume about 5 million barrels per day. Now, there is a reason I put the 2019 and 2023 number. In 2019, it was 5.2 billion, and 2023 is 5.4. The reason I put this number is because the Russian war started in 2022. So when USA or other countries, USA mostly, when it says that somehow the purchase from Russia, the oil purchase from Russia has dramatically increased and things like that, it is not about the overall purchase, because the overall purchase numbers pretty much remain the same. In fact, the 2024 number is about 5.6 million barrels per day. So our actual consumption hasn't changed much. What changed is, if you look at the graph, the first blue box that you see is from 2018 and 2019. The dark, dirty yellow color, that is part of the OPEC portion of where we used to get that oil. The whole bar is itself the total amount of oil that we import. The yellow one is from the OPEC, and the light blue is from the non-OPEC, right? Some of it is from some African countries, and part of it is also from USA and Russia. You come to 2023 and 24, you'll see that proportion has changed, which means we import less from, say, Saudi and few other countries, and we import more from Russia. And why did we do that? It's because the Russian oil at that time, these numbers kind of vary every year, but at that time, the oil was about $90 per barrel. But Russia, the Western countries, the G7 and others, have forced Russia to sell only at $60 per barrel if they want to sell oil, so that it doesn't fund the war. Now, from 90 to 60, that's where we shifted and bought things from Russia. It's not that we are buying a lot more oil. It is just that we are buying more from Russia instead of from the OPEC countries. That is a shift that has happened. Now, we import about 85% of the oil, and we produce 15% in-house, right? We take it from our reserves. For transportation, we use 50% of that oil, mostly diesel, and there are so many other things that we use for the transport, and we use the petrol and all of that too. Put together is about 50% is where we use the oil. This segment can actually be changed to electric at some point in the future. So then you see why the consumption of electric, the 2000 terawatt hours is going to add up pretty fast, right? The industrial use is about 12%, residential is 14%, and the non-energy is 16%, which includes like the fertilizers and plastics and all of that. The total reserves we have is about 4.6 billion barrels. That's what we have in Bharat for the oil. The world has about 1,700 billion barrels. Like say Venezuela and Saudi has about 300 billion barrels, and so much oil in all the other countries. And America does produce the highest oil today. We have only 4.6 billion barrels, and we are importing 85%. Let us say we don't import at all if nobody gives us oil. If we have a full production, our oil reserves will last no more than 2 years. That's all the reserves that we have. All right. So we have to import. So oil, somehow the dependency is a problem for us. Hopefully this transportation part can be moved to electric. We have to do some of those things, residential, many of the other things. We have to see how much we can shift to electric and use other methods to generate electricity. But oil is not our solution. Then comes the biofuel. Now the biofuel, I just want to add a couple of points here is there are there's some international organizations that has put up all these graphs and everything. They did all this math and said the electricity generation from biofuels, 1 million cows, the waste from 1 million cows can generate up to 1 terawatt hours. Now, the interesting part is, in fact, you see in the graph, the central portion that I circled in red, it is about the cow. We do have some biofuels that we do. It's mostly ethanol, right? America has a lot of biofuels as well, but that is mostly ethanol generation from the corn and other waste. We are kind of doing that too, but we haven't tapped into this full potential. We have to remember that Bharat is an agrarian society. It's 70% rural and it's an agrarian society. Now, unfortunately, what happened was in 1951, we had about 155 million cows for a 360 million population. By 2012, we only went to 190 million cows, from 155 to 190, but our population went to 1.2 billion or 1,200 million. And today we have about 200 million cows for 1.5 billion population. Now, the issue with that is, which means we need more milk and we have less number of cows. So we need cows with a bigger udder. So we started importing cows from, like the Jersey cows from USA to Russia and Europe. So many of the breeds that we have were actually, we have close to almost 1,000 local breeds, and many of them are slowly getting destroyed, right? That's one problem. The second issue is, actually, if you look at the benefits of how this works. So today with the 190 million cows, we actually have a potential for 200 terawatt hours. This is something that we had done in the past. Like we used to call, I think it's the gobar gas. A lot of villages had it. There are a lot of benefits for this. Number one is we generate, you can see in the picture on the left side, we generate electricity and the waste is actually used as a fertilizer. Unlike the chemical fertilizer, this is a natural fertilizer. This is healthier. We produce energy. We'll have more milk. We generate more food with healthier fertilizers. Everything is natural and will be healthier. Because the fertilizers that we currently were dependent on China, and we use the gas and petrol. Remember, we were talking about the oil and the gas. We were using that for the gas was used for fertilizers. So we can depend less on China. But you see, this is an alternate solution. So if we use this as the biofuels, if we had more cows like we had in 1950, if we had the same proportion, many of that waste, we can not only generate the electricity, we can also use that as a natural fertilizer, which makes our population healthier, self-sustaining, less dependency on the gas. It has a through and through benefits for it. Now, this is also more efficient because this is distributed. Each village can be self-sufficient. It is local and it doesn't have to be generated at one place. It can actually be moved to the remote locations, like in the villages, and it is proportionate to the population of the village. As many cows as the agrarian society, we proportionately generate that much, electricity and the fertilizers and things like that. And the milk, the local milk and food and everything that we generate will also be healthier. All right. Now you see that China actually does.
One small observation here, Mohan Krishna Garu. See, Israel has done amazing work in changing the DNAs of cows without changing the breed. They have some DNA solutions that essentially gives you bigger udder, much higher output. And Israel will work with the companies. The problem with this is cows are distributed to individual farmers and things of that nature. Whereas what needs to happen is one cooperative with 1,000 cows or 2,000 cows, they need to sit about working with Israel and say, okay, I have 3-4 breeds, each 250, and I want to improve the yield, get that thing going. That's one thing. That will give you a much higher productivity. Second problem India has, and this is completely fixable because this is something that is a recently acquired habit, that is of eating beef. One of the biggest amount of smuggling happens from India to Bangladesh across the border is cattle. The moment the farmer feels like the cow has stopped giving milk, immediately they send it off. And this is a very cruel way to do it. Again, what I said about Israeli technology can actually give a longer cycle and also more milk and plus, we are not really using the cow properly. After the cow stops giving milk, there are other things you are still getting, like for example gobar gas.
If it is utilized, see, we stopped utilizing it. That's the issue. And in fact, we had done one session in the past last year, Sriji, if you remember, on the cows and the dogs. So in that session,
Yeah.
I actually mentioned this too. The beef industry is one of the least efficient way of producing energy. In fact, it
Yes,
consumes
yes,
a lot more
yes,
than it
yes.
produces. But that's a different topic. So right now, I can say if we were to go with we are an agrarian society, and if we had the kind of proportionately the kind of cows to population ratio that we had in 1951, and if we had utilized this properly, this can be the local proportionate solutions in the villages that's well distributed. And because the energy is generated right there, there will be self-sufficient villages. In fact, we don't talk much about the losses. The true efficiency will be a lot more, because in the hydro and other cases, there is after generation, there is distribution, the transmission, and so many other things. But here, everything will be local, and it will be natural. It will be close to the nature and the fertilizers, which means less dependency on gas. You see, it's a compounding benefit, and this will certainly help in really shouldering a lot of burden. Now, China actually produces 200 terawatt hours with biofuels. USA does 50, and we currently do only 35. In fact, we are doing really lagging behind on this. Now, the last item is about the nuclear energy. So this is the last piece. So USA has about 800 terawatt hours it produces with nuclear energy. China does 450. These are the top two. And then we have other countries like France and few others. Bharat has only 50 terawatt hours. Now, what is a nuclear energy? So basically the thorium fission energy. Think of it this way, and these numbers are again from international energy associations and organizations, and all those references are given in the first page. So one atom produces about, after the fission, it produces about 200 mega electron volt. That's the energy it produces. And what is an electron volt? Think of it as you have a ball and you drop it down. The potential energy changes to kinetic energy, right, as it goes down. Now, an electron that jumps across 1 volt, it gains the kinetic energy. That energy is called electron volt. Now, one atom fission reaction for thorium, and thorium doesn't go through fission directly, but it has a certain process. It transforms itself, and you add a neutron, it changes from thorium 232 to 233, then protactinium, and then from there to uranium 233. And that goes through the fission reaction. So multiple steps to it. But the total energy per thorium atom is about 200 mega electron volt. We know the Avogadro number is 6.023 10 raised to 23. It's actually 6.022, but in school days, we just learned it this way. It's more convenient, 6.023. The atomic mass of thorium is 232. Now, the conversion for 1 mega electron volt into the watts. The conversion is it's 4.45 10 raised to minus 17 watts. Now we'll do a simple math.
Watt hours, I think.
Watt hours, sorry, it's an energy, so watt hours. So the energy per gram of thorium, we know for what one atom is, we know what 1 mole is, Avogadro number, we know the atomic mass. So if we take 1 mole, that's 232 grams, right? That's 6.023 10 raised to 23 atoms. So energy per gram is, you can see the math, 200 divided by 232 multiplied by the Avogadro number multiplied by the conversion gives us 26 megawatt hours. 1 gram of thorium can produce theoretically 26 megawatt hours. If you remember, the per capita for Bharat right now is 1.4 megawatt hours, means one person per year we use 1.4 megawatt hours, which means 1 gram of thorium can supply enough energy per person for almost 20 years, right? Now, the current reactors have an efficiency of 50% with the current technology. Of course, this is a very drastic, this is a high-end technology, right? It's really big brains, the nuclear scientists and nuclear physicists. So the efficiency varies from literally 0.5% up to almost 50%. And it has a potential to go to 90%, depending on how things are designed and the future technology, how it works. But I took an estimated efficiency of 50%. With that efficiency, our 150 tons of thorium can produce 1950 terawatt hours, which is the requirement for Bharat for 1 year. 150 tons is all that we need. Let's look at the reserves. Bharat has the highest thorium reserves of 850 kilotons. Then Brazil, Australia, USA, they all have substantial amount. China has only 100 kilotons. But thorium is pretty abundant in that sense. These are not in megatons, but kilotons is abundant because the utilization is also small, right? It's like, imagine 1 gram produces 26 megawatt hours. So in theory, if we were to go with the thorium, before let's look at the challenges and advantages. What are the challenges? The technology is a challenge. Remember, I said the efficiency is somewhere around 0.5% all the way to 50%, but it can reach higher percentage. All of this is dependent on the real big intelligent brains of the country, if they can get together and they can solve it. And one challenge to the technology is also that, starting from Homi Bhabha and even from those days, it's a lot of these top scientists who actually have the brain and bring about these technologies, they either die in accidents or commit suicide. However you want to look at that, I would think they get assassinated is something that's an open secret, but I'm just saying this is how each country tries to stop the other country from growing, because you fall behind in technology. We have seen some recent cases as well, but that is the issue with the technology. The second is the thorium getting converted to uranium-233 is a fissile material, which means we can make nuclear bombs. We remember 1998, we did Operation Shakti. We did 5 tests. Of the 5 tests, one was about 45 kilotons of TNT yield. And then a 5th test, which was supposed to be a very small one, producing only 0.2. But in reality, that test actually used uranium-233, which we got from our breeder reactors. So even though that looked like the smallest of all the tests, all the 5, the truth is that is the biggest leap that Bharat has made. Suddenly we said we don't need uranium from outside. I can use my thorium, have my uranium-233 and make my own bombs, right? That was Operation Shakti, the 5th test, the smallest one. So that is one concern the world has. But really, it's like we are a nuclear country, so we already declared a nuclear nation, so we should be able to use this. The advantages, this is the cleanest one. The byproducts are all, many of them are pretty much neutral, and this can be well controlled with the current technology. This can be well controlled, meaning the peak times we can generate more energy, the lean times at night you can reduce it. There's a better control over this as well, and all of this is the latest technology, and this can be well distributed. Remember that our nuclear submarines, Arihant has, I think it's 85 megawatt of the nuclear reactor. So we have miniaturized it. And the new one that we are making, besides the Arihant, Arigat, and Aridaman, and probably a 4th one called Ariharan, I believe, there's a next set of larger nuclear submarines we are building that has 195 megawatt nuclear reactors. So we have successfully miniaturized it. If we could do something like that with the thorium, it can be very well distributed. We can build across the country. And now looking at the number, 150 tons produces enough energy for our entire requirement for the year. We have 850 kilotons. So if we do the math, at the current rate, this lasts for 5,600 years. Just to put into perspective, for the Kali Yuga calendar, so far after the Kurukshetra war, it's been only 5,100 years. So I'm just saying this is like for eternity. This, I think, would be the future of the world too, not just Bharat. Currently, we do think of energy crisis, but I think if that gets severe, I'm pretty sure they'll come up with this kind of a solution. So we can solve the energy crisis in general for humanity. And I hope Bharat goes in this path.
So my God, I'm at a loss for words, Mohan Krishna Garu. It's beyond amazing. And it's very unfortunate that very few people are watching it. All of you who are watching it, may I request all of you to like this video. And I'm going to make 3 observations, Mohan Krishna Garu. And I happen to know a few things because I did a lot of research on nuclear submarines for this book. This book is all about nuclear submarines and the interplay between 2 or 3 countries. And what is it that the common man in India can do? If you happen to live on a state that has a coastline, then you are living in thorium rich country. Now, you know for a fact that in Tamil Nadu, there is a nuclear reactor. There are two. One is Kalpakkam. I think there are only two reactors there, but the big one was way deep south, and it's called Godangulam. And Godangulam was supposed to have four reactors. Only one is functioning. The I shall what shall we call them? The lilies, left liberal loonies, have made sure that nothing more will come, because they have just, these are all Andolan GVs. This could be China, this could be US, a combination. They'll always combine if they have to push India back. I'm an American citizen, so is Mohan Krishna ji. But we see the truth and we say it. So far, tell me how many videos you've seen with this kind of a detailed analysis of the energy sources and energy challenges. Not many. So what can you, the common man, do if you happen to be on the coastal states? Watch out for two things. One is, don't vote for these opposition governments, because they are hand in glove with many of these countries, because there is active thorium smuggling going on, viewers. First, they don't allow you to build your own nuclear power reactor stations. Second, they also steal your thorium. This is the big case against Tamil Nadu, and I'm so disappointed that the Modi government is unable to close the door on them and say, DMK, you will not come ever, ever, ever back to power. So, as a common man, I'll finish this and then I'll give you the thing. As a common man, what can you do? Vote out these rascals. That's all I can say. Over to you.
Yeah, so this is part of that in the challenges that I presented in the first slide, the politics.
Yes.
So this is where the
Yes.
politics, the NGOs, and there's so many other things. I think I mentioned about the opposition parties as well. And also in this technology, killing the scientists, getting rid of them. So there are ways of slowing things down, and people do that all the time, and we need to be vigilant for that. And another set of numbers is, in the world, we have about 450 the nuclear reactors. America has about 100 of them. China and France have about 60 of them, and that is substantial for France. If you think about it, France has a requirement of 500 terawatt hours, give or take, and about 300 odd actually comes from nuclear. So a country can do that. France is an example. An entire country has done it. So can we. We have about 25 nuclear reactors in about 7 locations, give or take. So out of the 450 reactors in the world, we have 25. America has 100. China has about 60. France also has 60. So we can take France as an example and say that it is entirely possible to solve it. Over 60 to 70% of France's energy requirement comes from nuclear. So we already have an example nation. We only need to follow it.
Thank you so much, sir. We have a few questions for you. Manoj wants to know, I saw a report from a well-respected organization that says the electricity generated by India is of great quality than China. Your views on it? Why boycotting Indians is raising, sir?
All right. So you're talking about the issues between the US and Bharat. That is a different political thing. I think we'll cover that later again on that subject. It has absolutely nothing to do with the trade and tariffs. We had done a session on P-Gurus just, I think, about a month ago, where
Yes.
I covered the exact numbers about the trade deficit. So clearly, the trade is not a reason for the conflict. That definitely isn't. And the energy requirement from Russia, that isn't either. All of these points were covered in the previous video. And I've shown exact numbers from the government websites, from US government website, from their own claims. So the reason there's a dispute is a little more intricate, and we'll cover that in the next session. But it is nothing to do with this energy. And do we have a better quality than China? Absolutely, in almost everything, not just in the technology here. If you look at our defense equipment too, each one of our equipments are far superior. And we have done one session specifically on that, about the China's fault lines and why our equipments are superior. Is because we can actually get the technology from all different countries. We maintain friendly relation with all the different countries, unlike China. So China has a very controlled media. They can claim whatever they want, and they can show whatever they want. Nobody has gone there to verify anything. Ours is genuinely, our Sukhoi 30s, for example, our technology, we take the best of what we produce, we take the best of what Russia has, what France has, what US, we integrate, and Israel, we integrate all of them. So our systems are definitely much superior in every possible way. Same goes with our, like even the nuclear reactors and all of them, we actually take the help and take the best know-how from other countries, right?
Next one, please. Raghunandan wants to know, have considered nuclear for power generation as India is building new reactor?
Yes, so we are building new reactors, but I think our pace is very, very slow. Like we have seen the numbers, right? Our total nuclear generation is about, I think, I forget the number, about 50 terawatt hours is what we do, which is very, very low. So we need to improve on that. Like I said, if you look at France, for example, out of 500 terawatt hours, about 300 odd, it does nuclear. And out of about 450 nuclear reactors in the world, we have 25. So we are definitely lagging behind. And this 25 to a substantial portion, we actually use the uranium 238 or 235 that we purchase from international market. If we have our thorium, the breeder reactors, we have substantial amount of thorium, which produces uranium 233, which is as good as uranium 235 and 238. And we can do everything in-house. We can generate the electricity in-house, and we don't have to be dependent on anyone. I think China, we do about 50 terawatt hours, which is literally negligible, which is almost like nothing at this time. And are we limited by technology? Yes, I do feel our scientists need to be protected as well. We did have a lot of deaths of our main scientists, so definitely our technology is slowing down. And like what Sriji has just mentioned, we have a lot of NGOs and political parties who do make sure that we don't grow in this direction. They come up with all kinds of nonsense on how unsafe it is. No, it is not unsafe, because these are designed very meticulously, and there are a lot of safeguards for this. So none of those are reasons. There is a political element and some technology.
Viewers, before we go to the next question, take a moment back. Look at this presentation. You've watched this thing now till the very end. Now imagine Mohan Krishna Garu making this presentation to Stalin, to that Reddy who is in Telangana. I don't know, I forgot his name.
Revant Reddy.
Or
Revant Reddy.
Revant Reddy, Siddaramaiah, Pinarayi Vijayan. I have some hope that Chandrababu Naidu will understand it. But these four individuals, you think they'll understand what the implications are here? Ask yourself this question. I know many of you said the system is rotten, the politics is bad. You go and vote first. First, make sure you make your vote count. Make sure that you are registered to vote. Make sure that you can go and, you have a valid vote wherever you live. Don't complain about the rest. You can do this. This is in your hands. This is so important, especially for our future generations. Sir, let's go to the next question.
Yeah,
I really, my blood is boiling when I see this thing.
Yes, I want to say that the way they have, I've seen for recent protests, the way they talk about it is nuclear is something dangerous or is going to contaminate. None of that is actually true, because this has very strong safeguards. And the way the plutonium to uranium, if you look at the process on how it works, then it is a very controlled system. If something goes wrong with the reactor, plutonium that doesn't become uranium 233. Pretty much everything stops right there. So these are breeder reactors, which means you have to go from plutonium to, the thorium. From thorium, you have to go to a uranium. If that step doesn't happen, then nothing is radioactive. These are very, very safe. But I think because people have some innate fear, the NGOs come and they really throw the wrench in.
The problem is very simple. Mohan Krishna Garu, the problem is very simple. These people are helping the NGOs, the radical outfits. They are helping these politicians launder their money in various ways, in various places. So there is a quid pro quo. I won't tell you, I won't stop you from operating as long as you do these things for me. The mindset has to change. And I'm telling you, they're very entrenched, because at least as far as Tamil Nadu is concerned, it's going to be one of the hardest states to defeat, because they have created their own version of Article 370. Hindi hatred.
Anyway, so let's go with the next question. Yeah.
I can go on and on.
So
Ramakrishna Hegde wants to know, in Karnataka, for Sharavati River pumped storage electricity production plan got approved. Is it viable? And if it comes in North Canara district, it has given three major electricity production plants.
yes, so the numbers that I've shown about the hydroelectricity, all of this is government pre-approved. I mean, this is well studied. The government did a full scan of the whole country and said where all it's viable, and they actually put them there. The pump storage actually makes things a lot more efficient. I think I explained, like, the conventional has is pretty low efficient, and we do a lot of wastage. So the pump storage is essentially taking that energy and pumping it back so we can reuse it and regenerate electricity again. And are these locations viable? Absolutely. This is well studied by the government, and that is how we came up with 135 gigawatt hours. If somebody stops these things, I think we are running into the same problem. Like for the nuclear, I think we have seen this in, I think, Gujarat or somewhere, for some of the dams they try to build. Somehow we
Yeah.
see this problem in Bharat, where anything that actually makes a progress, there's somebody, NGOs, who are going to block it. So don't even question this. This is very well thought out. All of these locations are very carefully picked, and this entire calculation is done. This is where the political challenge comes in. Of the 8 challenges, technology and political are two key things. And unfortunately, in Bharat, of the 8 challenges, the losses we can bear, the efficiencies, we can take care of everything, including technology. We have the brains for it. The problem we currently have in Bharat is actually political, because they don't let anything else happen. There are NGOs and people who never let any of these things happen. This is entirely viable. It's a good thing we have to do this.
OMG wants to know, Happy Dashara. When AIP is in submarines, then why can't they use it in space program? As you said, brains are silenced.
Yes, I mean, that'll be a different than the air independent propulsion is. That's a different subject altogether. I think that's different from our energy thing. So let's not spend time on that one. But yes, there are some political considerations for that too. But that's a different topic.
Raghunandan wants to know, I have read that stage 2 of 3 stage is online. Can you confirm it? I think this may be Sharavati.
For which one?
Sharavati project, I think. Hey, Raghunandan, you need to ask the question more completely here. Don't assume don't make assumptions. Okay, that brings us to a close of today's program. Raghunandan, if you can go ahead and phrase your question and use P Guru's app and send the question there, I'll definitely have Mohan Krishna ji address that thing at a later date. Thank you so much, sir. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. And I only wish more people had watched it. This concerns all of you, because your air conditioned television is all going to be at risk very soon. Thank you so much once again. Namaskar.
Namaste.
He wants to know, okay, so hold on, I just saw that. Thanks for showing us. So this is Raghunandan is a nuclear program, stage 2 of 3. I think thorium to stage 2 of 3 stages online. Can you confirm it?
Yeah, I'm not too sure about how far into the progress they have made. But I just know from theoretical standpoint, I don't know if you're talking about the thorium moving to protactinium,
Uranium.
and then to the uranium. And then it's the fissile material. So, I mean, I don't know about the individual projects on how far they're into it. It's a little more complicated. Like I said, this technology is changing. Breeder reactors, we are almost a couple of decades behind because of many reasons. They didn't get the proper funding, and we are fallen behind on the breeder reactor for thorium. But we do have the technology. We do have great brains to make this happen. So far, like you have seen in the last 10 years, the issue is politics. Once the political leadership changed, you have seen the progress in Bharat in the last 10 years. And I think it's the same in many other areas too.
So. Thank you so much once again. It's 1 hour and 14 minutes now. I don't know how time flew. And it's something that we all need to understand. A lot of things we are taking for granted. They are not granted. There are some, storms coming down the way. And if US really says that I'm going to discipline you, in many ways, these things can be put as obstructions. Thank you once again, Mohan Krishna Garu. Namaskar.
Namaste.